Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is that of Cleo Smith. Slightly different case for you guys today. We're off to Western Australia. Let's go. Sin and Tonic! Hello, how are we all? Hope you're all well. I'm still on antibiotics, so Paul made me a lovely, beautiful cup of tea. It might be too hot. Yes, it is. I can already tell. Hope you've all had a wonderful week. Let's go into the weekend with peace and love. Like I say, this case is slightly different to what I normally would cover, and that it involves a child. I don't normally like that. I don't want to delve into that, but this case really captured, when it happened as well at the time, it captured, I think, everybody. It was a huge case, but I just want to, I want to cover it, so I am, with my cup of tea, with my brew from me to you. Wow. The case takes us to the 16th of October 2021, Western Australia. Cleo Smith was 4 years old at the time of this story. Cleo, her mother Ellie, her stepdad Jake, and her baby sister Isla had all gone camping in a tent. Oh, I might get this word wrong. Let me read it carefully. They were near Carnarvon, Western Australia, known as the Quoba Blowholes campsite. I hate it when I can't pronounce something, when I can't just go, nee. Anyway, I'm trying. Carnarvon. It must be Carnarvon. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone from Australia, please. The campsite is on shoreline, and it's famous for these blowholes, and the like when the water. I'll share, if I can, some image of that. So it looks really cool and epic, and there's these blowholes, like a whale's blowhole, water goes up like that. There's lagoons. It's very nice. It's a lovely place, and this is where the Smith family were camping. The family arrived at the campsite the night before, so October the 15th. They set up their tent, their site, everything like that, got it all ready to go, and then Cleo went to bed at 8 p.m. The tent was one of those that has divided, it's all divided, so there's rooms, if you like, in the tent. Ellie and Jake were sleeping in one section of the tent, and then Cleo and her baby sister were in the other section of the tent, and Isla was in like a travel cot. There's a picture that is ingrained in my memory from when this case happened, of Cleo and her sister in their matching sleep suits, like pink and purple. I'll share a picture because that got to me. The thought that that's the last thing that you saw your child wearing before they've disappeared. Whoa, hold on. Interestingly, that night, Cleo actually woke up at 1:30 in the morning. She woke up and she was thirsty and she'd asked for a drink. So the night had been interrupted. It wasn't like they'd gone to bed and slept the whole way through. They had both been awake, Ellie and Cleo. When they woke up, Ellie checked on baby Isla. She was all fine, all good, and then she went back to her blow-up bed in her compartment. Cleo went back to sleep. All was good. Ellie woke up again the following morning between 6:30, when Isla had woken up and she was hungry and wanted her bottle. This is when her world just must have crumbled around her, because she gets up, she goes into that compartment and she sees that Cleo is not there. So she's gone to feed her baby and her other child is nowhere to be seen. Cleo's 4 years old. She's still a baby. What was most unusual as well, which is what probably got that feeling of pure dread and panic, just instant, was the fact that Cleo's quite big sleeping bag was also not there. So she had an adult-sized sleeping bag and it was gone. I think if the sleeping bag had been there, I think your first thought would be that your child had wandered off, which is horrific anyway, especially considering that they are at a campsite near water. Whoa, that just gets me terrified. I have a child that sleepwalks, so anything water, no thank you. Like, just sends the fear of God into me. We'd have to have some sort of something so he couldn't get out, because they do things when they're sleepwalking that they would do when they're awake, i.e. open a tent door. So things like that do generally terrify me. Carnarvon. There is a timeline of events that happened on this day. I'm going to go through that timeline with you because the police in this case, it felt like a very smooth operation. And I'm just going to gather a guess that police officers, her parents, everyone, I suspect the hope is that she's gone walking off, she's gone for a wander, and that they're just going to have a search and find her. And I'm sure it was on everybody's mind as well, that with the proximity to the water. The police arrived at 7:10 that morning. The police immediately establish a forensic area where they're going to look for evidence, stuff like that, and that is basically around the tent, which is the last place that Cleo was seen. Really quickly, like at 7:30, they requested a drone operator to have a look. I think that's really quick thinking, because that is really helpful, isn't it, to just scan that whole area quicker than any of them can do on foot. At 8 a.m, family, friends, they arrive at the campsite and they're all going off searching for Cleo as well. So all of this is happening quite quickly, which is good. And detectives do go back to their home address. They go to search for evidence to see if Cleo is there. Probably not telling the parents this, but in some cases, things are fishy. People kill their children. So I think they wanted to go check it out, see what's what. 8:34, they put up a road blockage on the exit and entrance into the campsite, so no one can leave. Ellie and her partner Jake, they had grown up really not far from this area, so that helps. I think it helps when you're looking for somebody to have an idea of the area, and they had gone to this campsite when they were children, so they were good people to be searching. They were searching on foot, they also got in their car and they searched around. I mean, what else can you do? It must just be awful. Sadly, they didn't find Cleo, and this search would continue for days. Detectives were stopping cars and caravans, looking inside of them, taking details of the drivers. The one thing that was in the way, I suppose, of people just thinking, oh, she just got up and she went for a stroll and she's got lost and she's in a cave somewhere, is the fact that her sleeping bag was missing. It was a large adult-size sleeping bag. It raised the red flag. It made people suspicious that this was not a girl that had walked off, that this was somebody had come and taken this child. Police then asked everybody in the local area to look in their bins, to just look in their gardens and see if they could find the sleeping bag, because that may offer some clues. Also, when Ellie had woken up in the morning, the tent was basically fully open. So it seemed, again, she's only 4 years old, it seemed unlikely that Cleo would have been able to fully open the tent. There was a lot of rumours and a lot of speculation as to whether Ellie and Jake had even taken Cleo to the camping trip. People who knew nothing were questioning whether Ellie and Jake, whether this was some awful thing that had happened at the hands of, Cleo's own parents. I think because of statistics, maybe that is probably why people were quick to point the finger at family members. It's only sort of, I'm going to have to find the statistic. Bear with me. Blah, blah, blah. I can only find the American statistic, because this case is in Western Australia, but so over 460,000 children go missing every year. Only 0.1% of missing children cases were a result of stranger abductions. 0.1%. In lots of other cases, children are abducted by a mum or a dad, in custody battles and things like that. So 0.1% is a small amount. However, police had seen or heard footage, CCTV footage, like around the campsites and things like that, and they heard Cleo. She had been there. The police also appealed to witnesses in the area, because that can be such a good tool, can't it? Like, what did you see? Cleo was seen at the campsite, so that was another, corroboration that she had been there. And witnesses also saw a dark sedan car leaving the campsite at around the time that Cleo would have probably gone missing, disappeared, because it had to be after sort of 2:30 or 2:00 in the morning, and then between 6, that because she woke up at 1:30 and spoke to her mum, then they've got to go back to sleep and be asleep. Her mum had to be asleep enough to not hear the tent open, and then she woke up at 6-ish to feed the baby. So between 2 and 6, and witnesses saw a car leaving in that time frame, and it came out of the park and headed toward Carnarvon. I can't even do an Australian accent now, it's gone. Other witnesses at the campsite, they said at about 3 a.m. That's it, it was about 3 a.m. they heard a car screeching off at about 3 a.m. Nobody could give a description of the driver or the car or the child, or if anyone was in the car, even if there was a child, because it was dark. It was 3 a.m. I'm sure you've all heard about, you know, if a child has been abducted and they're not found within 24 hours, then they're likely to not be alive anymore. And Cleo had been missing for quite some time. She went missing on the 16th of October, and on the 21st of October there was a press conference, and in this press conference the police said they were looking for a body and they believed that she had been abducted. Her poor parents. The drone operators were still looking, everyone was still searching, still looking, nobody gave up hope. The drone operators were searching around the blowholes mainly, and to see if there were disturbances in the sand. Ellie was adamant that Cleo would not have gone out of the tent. She said Cleo didn't do anything without her. She was always by her side. She was not a child that was adventurous and wandering off and all of this stuff. So it was highly, in her opinion, that was not in her character. She would not have opened the tent and thought, oh, I'm just going to wander off and go for a look. Because some children can be like that, and some children can sleepwalk, but she was saying, that's not my child. My child would not have done this. They would not have gone off on their own, and never. And you have to trust that from a parent. Most of the time, our instincts and our gut is right. We know our kids, but every now and then, you know, things happen, and that is different from what we think. So they had to keep looking. They had to search the area. They had to keep going on with the drone. They couldn't stop. Even though the searches were continuing, the main line of inquiry was that somebody had an opportunist had removed Cleo from her tent. A large reward was offered for any information on where Cleo was. The police were going through rubbish, like all of the rubbish of the homes of people that live nearby, and the campsite they were going through. Like, there was a lot of rubbish to go through. It was painstaking. And another thing that they did, and this, I think this proved to be the thing that broke the case. They began to focus on this car that left at around 3 a.m, and they wanted information about that car. It's a bit shady about the exact way that they caught the guy, but I do know that there was a ping on a cell phone tower at 3:05 in the morning. So they tracked that phone number down. This belonged to somebody called Terence Kelly. Kelly was found, and the police began following Kelly in his car. He was out and about, and they put him under surveillance. I imagine they tracked his cell phone to him, and he was in his car. He began to drive erratically. So the police hadn't planned to stop the car and arrest Kelly at that point, but because he began to drive erratically, they had to. I think that their reckoning and their thinking was that they would follow him, have him under surveillance, and then hope that he would lead them to Cleo or a burial site or something that they would then be able to link him to the abduction of Cleo. Mr. Kelly was arrested, and he was then taken into custody. Just hours later, at 1 a.m, 18 days after Cleo has disappeared, the police enter an address which is just minutes away from where Cleo lives with her family. They enter the address, they go into a room, and they find Cleo Smith.
We got her. I've got her.
Hey, Bobby.
Hello.
Hey, Bobby. Come here. Come here. I've got you, Bobby.
What's your name?
You're alright.
What's your name? What's your name, sweetheart?
My name is Cleo.
Your name is
You're
Cleo.
alright.
Hello, Cleo.
She was all alone, locked up in this house. They must have just been so happy, so happy that they have found her alive.
Cleo, my name's Cameron. How are you? Are you okay? We're going to take you to see your mummy and daddy, okay?
There's also a little picture of her that I can remember really vividly, of her on her hospital bed, and she's got like an ice lolly, and you can see in her little eyes, like she's smiling, but you can see that just the trauma. Sadly, because of an error in the media, there was another man called Terence Kelly, but with a different spelling of his name. And you know what the media are like, they hounded this guy down. They had photos of this man, and they put that all over the news and said that this was the man responsible and that he'd been arrested for the abduction of Cleo. But this man was not the same man. This wasn't the same Terence Kelly. And this poor man, even though the news retracted it, they removed his pictures, it had all been out there, it'd all gone out. So this poor man, he was so unwell, he panicked, as you would, because it's, you know, is he going to get mobbed? Just awful. So he had to take himself to the hospital and he had to be sedated because he was in such a state. What a false accusation that is. Like, that's horrific. They were so wrong. That was terrible. But the real Terence Kelly, with the guy that did do it, he was in police custody, and he did get taken to hospital twice because he was himself in not a good way. He'd hit his head repeatedly against a wall and damaged himself, so he had to go to hospital, and then he did it twice. He went to hospital twice for injuries to his head. Also, in this case, there is such relief, like, just everyone felt such relief, I think, just seeing that video and knowing that she was found. And I think everybody knew how rare that was and how lucky she was to be alive. But also there is going to be lasting trauma, huge trauma. And I'm not sure even to this day, and as her parents, I think they've very much tried to protect her story, her privacy, and it's not, but I believe there was a charge that was made against Kelly that was not being made public, and whether that is an abuse charge, I'm not sure. Perhaps her mum and stepdad and father wanted to keep that part of this away from the public. They didn't want her to grow up with that being over her. I'm not sure, but I think they had specially trained police officers, counsellors talk to Cleo over time and I'm sure she has ongoing counselling and support. But she was only 4 years old, and in one of the sources that I read, they just said that she had buried and blocked a lot of the things that had happened to her while she was in that house for those 18 days. What we do know about those 18 days is that Kelly had abducted her, taken her to that address. He had locked her mainly in a bedroom, and he would play loud radio music in the bathroom to hide her cries from neighbours. He said he tried to tie her to a chair and place tape over her mouth a couple of times, but that she was a fighter. I can't. She heard on the radio people talking about her, and she would ask about it, and it made him cross. So he said, like, I admit that I did rough her up a bit. Worryingly, he mentioned that he hadn't planned on keeping her forever. Now, whether that means he was going to let her go, or whether that means he was going to dispose of her in another way, that remains, we will never know. Kelly had a very traumatising past. He had complex behavioural needs, and he had an obsession with Bratz dolls. This was a big part of his fantasy. Also an obsession with daughters. He had many social media accounts that were related to the Bratz dolls. Neighbours would often see him driving around with Bratz dolls in the car like they were real. And he'd also cut and coloured Cleo's hair. So it was like he was treating her like his own living dolly. And I really hope that for Cleo's sake, even though that is traumatising enough in itself, I really hope that was all his fantasy was, and that's all that happened to her. Yeah, I think a lot of people hope the same as I do, that he was just treating her like a dolly. People in his local community thought he was strange, and he would sometimes be seen in the supermarket buying nappies for his dolls. He was really not in his right mind. He had Facebook accounts for imaginary children of his, and he would talk to them through their online accounts. He had no idea how to look after a real child, and he would leave Cleo alone for hours in that house, hours and hours. He would go and do business as usual. He went shopping, went to meetings, he visited friends and family. Kelly's story is not a happy one. He was abandoned when he was 2 years old by his parents, and they were alcoholics and drug takers. He was then raised by his maternal aunt. Kelly had speech and hearing issues, and before he had been given to his aunt, his parents would give him alcohol. So when he was a baby, his bottles had alcohol in them. He was bullied when he went to school, so he wouldn't wear his hearing aids, which meant he lived his life in quite a lot of isolation. And he grew up around a lot of trauma. His uncles, he was terrified of his uncles, so there was a lot of violence, even when he did then get placed with his aunt. When he was 12, he was hospitalised because he was suicidal. He was bedwetting. It's just a really tragic start for this kid. Well, a tragic life. As part of the court proceedings, he was diagnosed, if you like. They looked into him quite carefully, and it's a long list. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic with significant borderline and narcissistic traits. He had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and possibly the fetal alcohol syndrome. Kelly, I believe in his trial, had said that he wanted a child of his own. And that makes sense when he's got these fake accounts set up and he's obsessed with the Bratz dolls and buying nappies and things like that. It all comes together and you can see that that's something that he wanted. And it was only a matter of time before he went out to get what he wanted, which was a child of his own. People were really angry about the sentencing for Kelly, and he will be eligible for parole after serving 11 and a half years. And people are really angry that, for some people, that is quite a light sentence. However, the judge said he was taking into account the psychological condition. I hope that when he comes out, though, that they offer support and help for him, because it seems to me like he should be living somewhere assisted. Don't you think? It sounds... I don't know what the systems are all like in Australia, but here there's not enough money for things like that. So when people go into prison, but really they need proper psychiatric help, they don't always get that. And then they come out into the world and they're free and there's nothing there to catch them. Very little. So I really hope that it's different there and that he comes out to supervised living, basically, because he's got a lot of mental... The judge even said himself that all of these things added up together basically mean that he suffers with not being able to be accountable or understand that his actions have consequences. So that's a frightening person to have out and about unsupervised in 11 and a half years. Cleo's parents they've done quite a lot of interviews actually, because like I say, it was such a big case. They have moved. I hope that Cleo can just live a very normal life for the most part, because what they did say in a recent interview is that Cleo does still suffer with nightmares. And I think when something like that huge has happened to a 4-year-old and they have suppressed and blocked many memories from what did happen, the body keeps the score. There is a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, and that trauma just all lives inside of you and it just stays there. And it might be that for Cleo, that some of these things that happened to her and that she went through may not be able to be processed until she's an adult. That can happen. That can be quite common. I hope, though, that with the support of her lovely parents and her family and her friends, that she can go on to have a happy, healthy, normal life, and that the press do now leave her alone because the case is over. And that is all I have for you on today's case. I wanted to bring this one to you. I saw it and I just thought it's different to what I normally cover, but it's a really unusual case for a child abduction by a stranger to end this way. And it surprised me so much. Another thing that I forgot to mention, which is it doesn't blow my mind actually, because it's the way people are, but there were so many people that trolled Cleo's family, her mum and stepdad Jake, they were just trolled online so much. People thought that they had whatever your thoughts. Hello?
Hello.
You all right?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I've just got to talk to you quick.
Where was I? Yeah. Regardless of whether you at the time of something believe that I think they did it, I think they did it, I think, whatever, I think it was the parents. You don't know that. And in this case, it was obviously it wasn't the parents. So all of those people that gave them all of that grief, and even if you think it, why have you got a tappity tap? Why have you got to be sharing that? I never get that. Just move on. Keep it to yourself. Tell your mate. Oh, I think the parents did it. No, I think. Whatever. Have your little chit chat. Have your convo. Keep it. Why on God's planet would you want to have that out there for those parents to read? Because what if they're not? What if they weren't involved in it? They've got to read that, or I hope not. We probably read some of it. I think they did. I think they were quite aware of what people thought about them. Added on to all of the things that they're going through, all of that pain and panic, and it just, I don't know how they slept for 18 days. They probably did not. All of that, and then you've got people, I think you killed your daughter. Oh, brilliant. Great, wonderful. Just keep your mouth shut. If they're convicted, if they had done that, if they are like, it was so-and-so, then you can have your moment. Troll away. Call them everything you want. Be nasty. Who cares? But really, it was quite a big, it was a huge thing that people were really like on one about, I think they did it. I can remember it. I can remember at the time just reading things and thinking, why even write it? It's all speculation, so just shush. Anyhow, that is all I have for you on today's case. I think I've already said that today. I hope you're all well. I hope you've had a good week. I hope you've got a nice weekend to look forward to. I have got one of my kids' birthday parties tomorrow. Wish me luck. Earplugs. It's going to be fun. And then next week the tooth comes out. Hallelujah. I can't wait. Although I'm a little dubious because then there's just a gaping hole in my face, and last time there was a gaping hole, I've developed this huge, horrible infection, so I'm not actually looking forward to that. I'll be glad when it's all over. And also, it's not that big a deal. It's just my tooth. It's amazing how, honestly, I think I said it before, how something so small can just have such an impact on your well-being. It's just draining me. I just want it to be over. Thank you, please. Love you and leave you. Have a beautiful weekend. I will see you all on Tuesday next week. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Sin and Tonic. Hope you can join me next week for another true crime story. Probably some more antibiotics. Or a jar or a jug or a hug of gin. And I will see you next week. Bye.